restraints have been released. Push up on your shoulder harness and carefully exit the ride.
And welcome back to Kreators Korner here on the Deep End channel. My guest tonight, one of the great minds in our business, TJ Wilson.
Hey, thank you very much.
TJ, we were picking up with your travels from Japan.
Yeah.
And the segue to how did you end up from there in the WWE?
Brett went into the Hall of Fame in 2006, WrestleMania 22 in Chicago, and he brought myself, Natty, Ted as well, and Harry. He brought the four of us as well as his children. He brought us as his guests. And I remember that weekend Harry met with Johnny, and I think that's when Harry originally signed with WWE. And I was speaking with Carl DeMarco, and I remember he was like, he asked me, he said, "So do you want to work here?" And I was thinking like, yeah, but I mean, is anyone that puts on a pair of boots not? I mean, this is 2006, man, of course. And he's like, "Have you ever tried to get signed?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Okay, because you're smaller, let me work on it a little bit. Let me make sure, like, basically kind of tell me he's going to read the room a little bit and kind of go from there and help me out." And I remember he called me one day and he said, "Hey, can you get to these shows?" It was like Pacific Northwest, like at Tacoma, maybe a Vancouver live event. I don't remember. And I said, "Yep, I can." And then he called me back and said, No, never mind, actually. He said, "I'm working on a different tryout for you." He said, not a Lupa live event. I said, "Okay." And he said, "Is there anything you can do where, like, can you go be really busy this summer? That'll look really good." And I said, "Yeah, man." I said, I have a very good relationship with Brian Dixon. I can go back to All-Star Wrestling in England probably anytime. Honestly, he was so good to me, Brian. And he said, "Yeah, maybe see," like you said, that'd be a great idea. So I emailed Brian, emails me right back. And then a few days later, I was going to England for 9 weeks. I did 56 shows in those 9 weeks. It was show. It was a lot of shows. And in the middle of it, I remember Carl DeMarco, I called home, and Natty told me Carl wanted me to call. And so I called him. He said, "Okay, your tryout's set for October, I believe like 1st through 5th in Deep South in McDonough, Georgia." And he said, you're not going to get any taller. You're not going to get much bigger. He's like, "Just get as lean as you can." He said, "Get as tanned as you can." And he said, "The one thing you have to do, or the one thing you cannot do, you can't let anybody there out wrestle you that week. You cannot." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Carl, I'll do my absolute best to follow those instructions." And then Natty had to try out the same October 1st through 5th with me. So Carl really set that up, and it was all because of being with Brett at WrestleMania 22.
In All-Star, TJ, did you find that it was kind of a familiar style? Because Stu came out of a very British approach to wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely like in Stampede, and that, like, Jericho and I talk about it a bunch, called the Calgary Style. Calgary Style is kind of a mix of like Japanese. Obviously, we've had a lot of Japanese wrestlers come through and really kind of leave a mark on everybody. A lot of European, obviously, with Davey and Dynamite, and just a plethora of guys, and absolutely. And so when I was an All-Star, the style had like a little bit of the English style to it, but it was more kind of. But when I went there so when we do the town shows, it'd be a lot more of the more traditional British style, and when we would do these camp shows, they're kind of like basically would be like wrestling like at a fair or at like on a cruise or something, where it's more of just casual fans kind of coming in and out of the show. And so it was a little bit more just like American style with some British stuff. I wrestled Robbie Brookside over there and Doug Williams, and we had some like very, like, we had some British style matches for sure. But for the most part, especially that when I was there in 06, it was mostly those camp shows. So a lot of them were the, you know, just a lot of bad guy versus good guy, UK versus the world. I was there to represent evil Canada.
Ah, evil Canada. So then this led to the audition, right? The audition for the WWE.
Then the funny thing was, so that week in England, not in 06, but in 05, the year prior, Dave Taylor had been over there with me. And I teamed with him and I wrestled against him. And I also 2 or 3 days over there, just randomly, like he kind of ran like a little training seminar, like just, hey, we're all at the building, whoever wants to kind of get in and work on this stuff. So I really jumped at the opportunity to do that. And what's funny is it helped me so much, because my first day at Deep South, I'm nervous. Like, you know, I just turned 26 at that time. The mandate going around is you got to be 6'2" and 220, and I'm neither of those things. So how am I going to get a contract here? I got to figure this thing out real quick. I got 5 days. I got 4. I flew home on the Friday. I have 4 days to really figure this thing out. And anyway, I walk in, and the first guy I see that's in the ring is Dave Taylor. And he's like, TJ Wilson. And oh, my God. I'm so happy to see this man. I knew he was going to be there, but I didn't know he's going to be the first guy I see that kind of like helps me kind of really break the ice. And then like he made it very comforting right away. I was in his class in the mornings. He gave me all the best advice. He kind of told me what to do, what not to do. He was awesome, Dave Taylor. He was great. Bill DeMott was at my tryout too. He was very good to me, wrote a very nice report. Dave Taylor told me about the report. And the funny thing was, so I wrestled Kofi in my tryout match that week. I wrestled Kofi. It was October 5th, 2006. That match I did in Calgary, it was October 5th, 1996. So it was exactly 10 years to the date that I wrestled a WWF live event match. 10 years later, I'm wrestling a tryout match in Deep South that it ends up getting me hired.
That's fantastic. That's some karma for you. That's fantastic.
Yeah, who wrote that one? Because I didn't.
So finding yourself in the WWE, what was it like to be in the big show?
It was intimidating. It was awesome, but it was like, I knew, like, okay, like now I really have to work hard, and I really have to. I knew I'm undersized in that world, especially at that time. I have to work hard. I have to outwork everyone as much as I can, and do my best at attempting so. But I also had a lot of really good. I was with a lot of really good people, a lot of really good friendships that I have to this day, like Kofi, a guy, Robert Anthony, Brodus Clay, Ezekiel Jackson, Natty. The Bella Twins end up coming there at that point. They're brand new. Never wrestled a day in their lives. Alicia Fox, Connor from the Ascension was one of the first guys there. His wife, Chrissy. There was a lot of us that came from Deep South. Like I was like very last at Deep South basically, and then it shut down. I was there for a month. It shut down for about a month, and then we moved to Tampa. Heath Slater, Heath Miller, like one of my favorite people. Like Hawkins and Ryder, I met in Deep South. Like I was very intimidated, but the guys, Ray Gordy, the guys that were very nice to me and very welcoming, which was most people. I haven't forgotten to this day, and we're all probably. I'm fairly good friends with all the ones that really, really stood out as being like awesome people to me at the beginning. But I was intimidated, but I also was excited. Like, okay, I remember thinking to myself, okay, like any locker room I've ever been in, I've gotten along with everybody. So why should this be too much different? So it is different because you're around each other like 5 days a week rather than 2 or 3 even. So that's, you're around each other a lot. So you really start to test and find out who you are and who these other people are. And I always look back on my time in FCW. In the moment, I enjoyed my time there. I knew like this would be one of those things I'm going to look back on and with really fond memories. And I do. I loved my time in FCW. I think I spent kind of a perfect amount of time there. If I got called up any sooner, I might not have been as prepared or as ready. There was a time where I was kind of tasked with wrestling a lot of the brand new guys, like Dave Otunga's first match, not in front of fans, but in that arena, is with me. Bo Rotundo, I believe his first, or for sure one of his first, is with me. Tarver was brand new to the system. We had like a 20-minute match in front of at a show in Newport Richie. Like we had a lot of I started getting tasked with wrestling a lot of guys' first matches and or helping them kind of, I guess, feel welcome and kind of get them off on a good start in that sense. And I love that challenge. Like it really taught me a lot about myself as a performer, and to wrestle a guy who's never wrestled before, see what you can kind of get out of them and what they can get out of themselves is actually a very cool thing. And it taught me a lot. I got to work with Dr. Tom and Steve Kern at that time on promos, and then that eventually became working with Dusty, which helped a lot tremendously. I would go back later in my NXT run and really work with Dusty a lot too, but I worked with him a little bit in my initial FCW run as well.
Undertaker has shared the story that so many guys get intimidated by the locker room, but he was always willing, he said, to offer any advice to anyone who would listen. Did you find that the locker room was open and receptive, and were there people that you could go to in the locker room to say, hey, how do I do this? How do I get over? How do I work this angle? Did you find that there were people that you could kind of regularly go to get that advice?
I'm on the main roster, absolutely. But when we're in FCW, it's like a little bit of Lord of the Flies. We have our coaches. But I remember, like, for example, I was in Deep South when my first day in Deep South when I was actually there, like after my tryout. Brad Armstrong was one of the coaches there, and we were doing drills or whatever. And then I remember he pulled me aside and he said, "Hey man, how long you been wrestling?" And I was like, at that point I was like, it's like 11 years. Like this summer will be like 12. And he said, "Oh," he's like, "that makes sense." He's like, "You move very differently." Like, and then I realized like a lot of the guys didn't have as much experience as I did. So when I'm in FCW, like I definitely don't know the answers to the test whatsoever. But I did have not more than every like Sonny Siaki was there. Like there were Alpha Junior. Like there were some guys there. Ted DiBiase ends up showing up, but like at one point I had some of the most experience of the guys. So I was like, we're all trying to figure out WWE world together. But when I'm on the main roster, there's a lot of guys that I could get advice from, like Edge and Christian. Like Christian's debut back is the same day I debut on ECW. So like he would always give me good advice. Edge would always give me good advice. Taker at that time, he does the WrestleMania match with Shawn, and then he's off until like the fall. So I got called up right before WrestleMania, like in February, and so I didn't really establish like a big, like a little bit. Actually, I take that back. I take that back. My first European tour after WrestleMania, Shawn Taker's there. It's after that he takes some time off. I forgot. He does give me a lot of good advice, and I could ask him a lot of good questions because I also kind of felt we had a little bit of a link. My Tokyo Joe had helped Taker go to New Japan before. Oh, okay. So I brought up Tokyo Joe to him, and another guy that gave me a lot of good advice, literally from my first time getting called up and doing a dark match, is Shawn Michaels.
Really, Shawn? And then what kind of advice did Sean give you? What kind of?
He just like in that specific match, he just told me, he's like, hey, when you have him in this hold, like don't worry about like fidgeting with his arms. He's like, I understand what you're trying to do. You're trying to show that if he gets his arm out, he's gonna escape, but don't worry about that. Worry about like the big picture. So okay, and then he's like, but man, everything else, he's like, very good. The way you move, he's like, and then he just every week he would just pull me aside and help me out. Those first few weeks, he was awesome. He was so awesome.
That's fantastic. And what did you find was probably because I mean, New Japan, All Star. I mean, they're very different environments. What was the trickiest thing to adapt to in the WWE?
I guess honestly, just probably just the travel and the schedule, and just like especially like the first few weeks, I'm just doing TV. I'm flying in, so like I'd fly in on Sunday. I would at that time ECW was still with Raw, but the first week I get called up. I do a dark match on Monday in Oakland, and then the next day I debut is in Fresno, and so just like getting used to like now flying to these places, renting a car, hotel, where do you stay? Okay. And you kind of figure out these different things in these different towns. And then after a few weeks, I remember I did my first loop of live events, and it was like, oh, these are a little bit different. You don't have to, you fly in the day of instead of the day before, and you don't have to be there until 5 instead of like the call time at TV's being like 2. So like, it's just adjusting to these different, I guess, like customs on the road that like in FCW, we have similar kind of rules, but we're driving to these shows, you know, the most being kind of 2 hours away, or, you know, like there was a Miami show, which is about 4.5 from Tampa. It's a trek, but otherwise most of it was, you know, a couple hour drive, but there's not like these flights and hotels and all the, you know, it just, the travel is definitely, I think, what shocks people the most.
Yeah, absolutely. So with in the WWE, when did Harry arrive? And you formed the Hart Dynasty.
Time before I was, and then he debuts, and then he's kind of taken off TV, and then Natty debuts after WrestleMania 24. Then I debuted just before WrestleMania 25, and then Harry joins us, I believe, in May that year.
Oh, okay. And then how was that reforming the Hart Dynasty? And that's a legacy. I mean, that must have, did it worry you?
Yep.
Those are big boots to fill.
And then like when we win the titles that next year, after WrestleMania 26, I just remember thinking like, you know, we did it. We really did it. Like Harry is the person who I teamed with in my very first match. I'm 5 years older than him at that time. Like I had just turned 15. He was just about to turn 10. He's 9 technically in the match. Our birthdays are like 6 weeks apart, just the way it works. Anyway, and then, you know, fast forward 15 years and we're winning WWE tag team titles in Richmond, Virginia. Like it's crazy because we didn't win that first night. We lost to Ted and Matt. But 15 years later, Miz and Big Show picked the wrong fight.
Yeah. That'll learn them.
Yeah, luckily they didn't talk with Ted and figure out the strategy how to beat us.
Yeah, I mean that's the legacy is just incredible, and you know, to see you guys get over it was fantastic.
It was really fun, and also we were working with Brad a lot at that time. Like it was so cool. It was, you know, clotheslining Vince at WrestleMania, hitting him with a heart attack on the floor, like. Damn, like it's almost silly to even think about that this stuff really happened. It's crazy. So fun. So much fun. Like I wouldn't change any of it.
Do you prefer working heel or working face? What's easier?
I enjoy both. I probably equally. I'll do one for a little while, and then I'll almost get bored of it, and then want to switch, and then switch back. And as a heel, I feel like I always kind of succeeded a little bit more. But I like to think I could do both equally at that time.
Is it more fun being a heel? Do you enjoy it more?
It can be. It definitely can be, absolutely. But then at the same time, like, I wrestled Trent Beretta in Calgary at the Saddle Dome, and like the audience was loving me. So like,